Madeline. I'm head of brand at Dose. We're a natural supplement company with a big focus on liver health, because your liver is our pride and joy. I like to say we're a leader in the liver health space, and so I get the opportunity to have a brand over there, oversee performance content, TV, influencer, social, and kind of all the fun brand marketing initiatives we're doing.
Hi, I'm Deepa Gandhi, and I am one of the co-founders of Dag & Dover. We're a bag and accessories brand that's meant to help you get the most out of your day and take you kind of anywhere that you're going. And I oversee, as one of the co-founders, revenue strategy, growth marketing, and some here.
Hi, I'm Rod Spolkman. I'm the Director of Marketing and E-commerce at Rainwear, which is a California-based men's and women's apparel brand. And I am really excited to be here.
Amazing. And yeah, I appreciate you all being here with us. So I want to kick off with talking a little bit about once again, the turbulent times that we find ourselves in. You're going to hear me say that probably 5 times more before we leave. And really, what are y'all currently prioritizing in your businesses via marketing initiatives, but then also just operationally speaking in relation to some of the news that has been hitting the headlines, and just the changes in customer sentiment as well. So, Mads, we'd love to start with you.
Yeah. So I've been getting to be really in the weeds of influencer this year, which has been fun. It's something we never really focused on, just because we're such a lead-based product. It's not like having the hair influencers sell it like hair care tool. You know what I mean? That's easy. You know the audience is into it. It's a liver health supplement, and so it's kind of hard to find the right people. So we never really saw organic return, and EMP is basically my arch nemesis. It's just on the performance side, it's just not something that I see value in. And so we started looking at it through the paid lens. And so now our creative strategist and our influencer manager work really closely together. And we basically take the raw content from the influencers and we cut it up like it's an ad. So we're putting out multiple variations, we're tracking performance after a week, we're putting out iterations on it, we're taking that content, we're throwing it on YouTube, we're throwing it on TV, and we've seen some of the lowest CACs that we've seen in years, to the point where we're able to continue scaling the account on more of these kind of brand-focused creatives, because it's bringing the average CAC down so much. So that's just been a really fun channel to spend some time on. And then another one I just added like an hour ago, that I do think is fun to touch on, that we've been doing, is I'm starting to have our paid creative strategists sit more across the business, because it's like, I think when performance is low, it's easy to be like, what's a new channel, what's a new channel, what's a new channel? But you have people that are like the experts on selling your product. Why are they only on one part of your business? So recent example, we brought email in-house, and we've been having our creative strategists write the email copy, and we have some emails that are still in the pipeline from the agency that was doing it, and those are going live, and then we have some of the internal ones that our creative strategists have been doing, and we've been outperforming them by a ton in the revenue that it's driving. So it's just really interesting to see what happens when you take a creative strategist and you put them into other channels. So that's something that I'm excited to kind of help us, hopefully increase conversion on other channels with.
I love it.
Very interesting times, indeed. And so, for us, we had a very, I'm going to say, interesting 2024. And coming into 2025, we've done a very drastic, dramatic shift in our strategy. What's cool about our brand is it sells in IRL, right? It's something that if you touch, you feel it, you see somebody carrying it, people are all into it. And over the past 18 months, we went from our customer acquisition number, our number one channel has, since we started the brand, has always been word of mouth. But we went from it being driving 30% to 40% to 47% of our customer acquisition, which is insane if you think about that. And it fundamentally has you rethink what's the right marketing funnel to acquire customers. And so we've gone from a place where the mid part of the funnel was so important, we threw tons of dollars at it, right, paid, etc. And we stopped seeing efficiency. And then when we got to year end, we kind of net looked at, this was our mix in 24. But this is where conversion was strong. This is where traffic came from. This is where new customers came from. And then this is where they're telling us they learned about us. And so that really had us rethink what is our upper funnel and then our lower funnel strategy, and how do we do that? We actually started working with HYPE10 in this transitional phase, and it was a really good partnership, and they're like, this is working for you, this is not working. And I was like, ooh, this is why we are so inefficient with some of our spend. And really, what's interesting is, as you grow as a brand, you kind of get caught up in this paid cycle. And for so many years, we were not in that. We were focused on organic relationships with influencers that would eventually turn into paid relationships, but they loved us, so we would see really low CACs because their base knew that they just loved the brand, and now we're just giving them an incentive to shop and buy the products. Or in-person activations, wholesale as a marketing vehicle. And really, like last year, now this year, we're focused on that. We're like, what direct channels can we use? What organic channels can we use? And how do we use paid to support that, right? How do we fill the upper part of our funnel? But then once they come to our site, it's on us, right? It's how do we make sure that they're getting there? And gifting is like a massive part of our marketing strategy, because we know when we get the product out there, whether it's VIP celeb influencer gifting or literally gifting product to people who are our target demographic, that really works and pays dividends for us. And then in the current environment, we're like, we have to own that and get into that more, because who knows what is going to happen with the customer in Q3 and Q4. Like, I'm projecting a very bleak Q4, and like my personal thesis, and I've heard this from a lot of other people, is the customer currently is like shopping before they think price increases are going to hit, right? Before inventory is potentially going to be stocked out, because certain brands are just not replenishing if they have a heavy, especially China-based supply chain. So it's like buy now, buy now. So internally, my directive is let's get the sales while they're there before people potentially like leave for the summer and then they come back and they're like, I lived my best life this summer, and now the economy is like tanking, so I'm going to spend nothing. And so like that also helps though with organic, focusing on organic and direct. It makes it really easy to kind of get that message across and push and pivot and ebb and flow as you need. But it's a very interesting time.
Before we get to you guys, I want to ask one quick follow-up there. Where did you see that it was moving from 35%, 40% to 47% in terms of word of mouth that's being made?
Like where is it when? Or?
Yeah, or like what tool did you use? Was it post-purchase survey?
Post-purchase survey.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome.
Highly recommend post-purchase surveys if you don't have them.
Awesome.
Well, we have a really interesting business because we have about 50-50 split men's and women's. And for a long time, we had similar strategies targeting both men and women, mostly on Meta. We have a very big catalog business. We have 50 stores, a big wholesale business. And we've really realized in the last year that they're really two different businesses and require two different marketing strategies. So last year we launched influencer marketing, which has been amazing for us on the women's side. And we generate a lot of content that we'll use on the paid side, and then we also have a nice big kind of organic push that we use through ShopMy, and that's all been going really, really well. We see really low CAC there, and it can support multiple channels like TikTok, Pinterest, as well as Instagram and Facebook. But the men's side, we haven't really cracked that nut there, and it doesn't feel on brand for us to have an influencer talking about clothes, and I don't think our customer is actually looking for that when they're on Instagram and they're on Reels. They're looking to be entertained. And so we have to think about what are we going to do this year to cut through to him, and we need to meet him where he's at, and we still think we can get him to convert on Meta, but we probably need to touch him in different areas like a podcast or a newsletter advertising or wherever he is at. We need to meet him where he's at versus trying to force something that's not working. And so that's been a focus for me this year, especially as we're going to be going into a really challenging second half of the year with rising costs on our own side, and we need to find efficiency there. So looking at kind of diversifying the channel mix for him and doubling down on influencer for her.
So that parlays well into the next question here, but I wanted to touch on channel diversification. So, we've worked closely with all of y'all for some of which 3.5 years, others, 7 years. Before that, Diva, 8 months, something along those lines. And so, with that being said, as of late, one of the things that we've been prioritizing for y'all's businesses as your media partner, but then also just in terms of conversations we're having with y'all, is an openness and a willingness to diversify outside of the classic dwell and Google, right? And trying to find pockets of opportunity for incrementally sound conversions and kind of a first touch point that maybe has been an afterthought in the past. So could y'all talk to the group here a little bit about how y'all have diversified your channel mix, which channels you started to operate on as of late, and how that's been going?
Yeah, Yeah, so two that we're focusing on a lot right now are TV and organic social. With TV, I think that there's sometimes a misconception that it's always going to be a six-figure investment in getting the creative, which if you're going high production, it will be, which is a fun invoice to get. But you can also just use fast-performing ads on Meta to limit the TV creative. What's funny is on streaming, it honestly works better than the high production. People tend to sometimes look at the high production and it's like, I know it's an ad, there's nothing relatable about it, but if they see someone talking to them on the TV and it looks like, you know, what TikTok would look like on their phone, they can run that. I've recently been working with an agency that actually just started a few months ago, and they do this for you at a really low cost. It's called ScreenBridge. And so they're doing 2 of these kind of social forward ads for us a month. I think it's $2,500 or $3,000 which for a TV creative is pretty damn good. So now we're able to get 6 out a quarter at no lift to our team. And then the other one is organic, and we kind of had the opposite sort of start, and we were so focused on paid that we never really paid attention to organic brands. And I think we did such a great job with our product. You have 2 customers. It's a supplement, so people are either being reactive to a problem or proactive. We've got all the reactive people. How do we get people that want to be proactive about liver health? And that's through education. And so we really invested in doing kind of these like high production, podcasty feeling, educational content clips on social, which got like 100,000 views on talking about protein synthesis the other day, and like how it relates to your liver, which is a boring subject, but we've been finding really fun ways to like bring the conversation up on social, and now we have people where, maybe they're not focused on liver health now, but in a few months when they are, they're gonna remember that video, and they're gonna remember that, social account that they saw. They must be a leader in the space. So it's like, how do you get people, talking about the product before they're even buying it, and organically doing that.
Love this question because channel diversification is something I think every 18 months you go through a process, right? Like literally, we've been at this for 12 years now, and every 18 months you're like, need to shift. Things are getting shifting. And we are very aggressively focused on getting away from that duopoly. And because we actually have seen some really inefficient results. And so I think on there's to me with channel diversification, I think there's diversification in paid media and always being on top of that, right? So it's are we working with AppLovin? Are we investing in content creation for TikTok, right? Are we trying to make sure we have content that goes viral? Because I think what I find fascinating about TikTok is attribution is so hard, but if you have the right content hitting the right people, you see that lift, right? And we've seen that lift. We've seen that halo effect that can be super important. So focusing on that, you talked about TV, so I don't need to talk about that, big buyer on that. But then with channel diversification, there's also diversification in your organic channels. And so we've gone through ebbs and flows of what we focus on. Are we pushing into gifting, right? That is massive. That's always kind of a steady constant for us. But then events and activations, right? There was a time when it was cheaper to just spend your dollars on paid media. But now when you're looking at it from a CPM perspective, a really well executed but scrappy, not super high production value event for influencers or editors or your VIP customers can go a really long way, right? And so we last year really started to get back into events and activations, and this year it's a very large part of our strategy. It's going to be an even bigger part of our strategy in 2026, but then it also goes back to understanding where your customer converts. So for us, that 47% customer acquisition piece, right, being word of mouth, then that really validates shifting budgets, right, to events and activations and thinking of them as an upper funnel thing, and then just, taking the KPIs you use for any upper funnel part of your marketing stack and saying, well, how does that work for events and activations? And yes, you use things like EMV, which don't love, but you kind of have to love, and you use that. But it is really about, I think, always looking at, does the mix shift your business forward and up, or is this mix stagnating your business? And I think trying to get ahead of that point of stagnation is really important.
I love that point, talking about the upper funnel and investing in the brand, and that's something we've been talking about lately, because there is so much competition in the apparel space. There's a 5-pocket men's pant in every brand, right? So why buy the marine layer pant? And a lot of that comes from evoking an emotional response, and that comes with supporting your brand. So we are thinking about how do we support the upper funnel so that we can then get that purchase on Meta or on TikTok or YouTube, wherever the person is spending time. But that's something that we're considering. We've done some TV before, and it was actually a very high production cost. And it's good to hear that we can do it at a much cheaper level, but I think that would be something that we're interested in doing this year to support all of our other channels. But in terms of men's versus women's, like I talked about for men's, we're thinking about Twitter X as another channel for us, as well as podcasts and YouTube, and trying to meet him where he's at. And then women's side, we're also looking at influencer events. We have 50 stores in all the biggest markets, and we should be leveraging that and getting our customers in the store as well as our influencers, and it's also a great opportunity for us to capture content and then use that on the organic side, but also the paid side. So that's something that we're excited to look at later this year.
Amazing. So parlaying that into the next question, y'all all internally have amazing creative teams, right? Robust creative teams with strategists, designers, so on and so forth, and at times need to leverage an agency or not, so on and so forth. I think potentially a lot of the brands in this room are contemplating the efficacy of having some of that work be done internally versus working with an agency, and maybe don't know where to start, right? Who should I hire first? Is it a designer? Is it an all do the creative strategy? Or can I leverage a motion AI agent and that'll get me halfway there, and then I have another person, whatever it might be, right? So could you guys talk through your current creative team's makeup internally, the partners you currently leverage from a creative perspective, and how you think about building a team?
Yeah, I think there's value in having a mix of both. Right now we have an internal creative team of 10, and then we utilize HYPE10 for creative. I'm really lucky enough to work under a CEO that was basically like, sure, go grow a team. And so I kind of got to decide how we grew it, and really proud of the way we did it. And I think I kind of figured out a formula that doesn't burn people out. And so we will have a strategist, and then you have a freelance, editor or designer. I found a lot of value in having a US-based editor that didn't mind talking behind the camera here and there to do some production in-house, which was really fun. But we've also utilized, what's the agency? Growth Assistant?
Yes.
Someone like Growth Assistant, where you can get an outsourced editor, and they're awesome as well. Use the freelancers until that invoice is looking like a full-time paycheck, and then bring it in-house. And then from there, I always just say strategist, editor, designer. And then I think, if you have a lower SKU brand, your creative strategist is just going to get burnt out. There's only so many ideas this person can come up with. So I really see the value of also having a creative partner. We've found tons of winners that our creative strategists were inspired by, winning ads that the HYPE10 team made, and we wouldn't have come up with those ideas if we didn't have, the brains that were there, kind of helping us keep those ideas fresh. So I think that is kind of my winning formula. And then, what was the second part of that question, Max? Oh, wait, I did have one more point.
Okay.
That's a good one. I think it's really, really important to have your editors and graphic designers be trained like strategists. I have a graphic designer, and I just taught her how to read heat maps. So now she'll design a landing page. She'll go into performance a month later. She'll look at the heat map, and she's the one suggesting optimizations to have the dev team make to then go out and try to increase conversion. And we have this editor, Jeremy, and he just lives in motion. Like, he's in there every single day looking at what's working, what's not, and he's taking that in and using that when he's editing. And you really see the time you save because your strategists don't have to be making all the decisions. And you have people that are, again, thinking like strategists. So yeah, we found that investing time into helping them think like that's really helpful.
Very cool. That seems to be a common theme.
Oh, yeah.
Take somebody that's potentially pigeonholed into this role,
Yeah.
plug them in somewhere else, because they have a fresh perspective.
Well, everyone's
and
so
learn a new
capable.
tactic. Yeah.
Everyone is so capable, and I think a lot of times people think no, only the strategists know how to do analytics, and only everyone is so capable. Just put invest time in that.
To echo that, when we started the brand and the business, so there's 3 of us that co-founded the business. I'm much more the analytics, finance, numbers person. I'm the spreadsheet person at the end of the day. Or as one of the people on my team called me once, a computer person. I was like, I think you mean spreadsheets. She's like, yeah, that's what I meant. And then there's one of my co-founders, she's more BD sales. And then the third is our creative, right? She went to Parsons for design school. She's a designer by trade. And when we started the brand, it was fascinating the conversations I would have with Jessie, who's the Dover of Dyking Dover. She's the creative, she's the designer. And she would be asking me things like, oh, when I was a junior designer at whatever company, I was forced to just design within this box. And I was like, oh. as the person who's been helping make those decisions, this is why. And she's like, why are these conversations not happening cross-functionally? Yes, you might have it in like a smaller group and a smaller group, but I think something's really nice about this boom of like next-gen brands is I think we bridged that gap. And so for us, we purposefully started to hire and build our culture where it was like left brain, right brain. Our product literally is like left brain, right brain product, where it's like beautifully designed but also organized. And we're like, we should never hire somebody on my side of the world that doesn't have an appreciation for the creative, for the arts, for design. But then we also should never hire somebody who's on the creative side who doesn't want to either already dig into the data and analytics or isn't open to having that conversation. And so even to this day when we hire, we interview, we actually all three founders meet with them because we all want to gut check that like you're going to be ambassador of everything, right? Because if you're designing product or you're designing creative assets, you should understand what's working and what's not working, right? And if you're deciding how much inventory you should hold or what the financial like trajectory of the business is, you should understand what's happening with trends. And where is the industry going from that perspective? So it's so important. I think it's so amazing what you can harness out of your team if you go about it that way. So that's just like my 2 cents on that. Love it. Honestly, I don't need to say much more because I agree. It's all about freelance until you need it full time, and over the years, that's really how we've built it. For us, brand is so maniacally important that we have learned that it just should always sit in-house, but it's really good to have partners externally that help support us. And I think that always having the balance of agency support and in-house is important because agencies see so much that it's really helpful to understand what are they seeing and leveraging that. But then for us, we've learned it always still needs to be in-house and we need to be the ones creating and decision-making. And we're continuously finding that anything creative, even when we do outsource it, we bring it in-house. And that's very much just like a personal decision more than anything. And knowing your team and your creative partners and your creative director.
We lasted 1 month.
We're similar. We have everything in-house, and we have so many touch points that our creative team works on. We have store signage and or full store design team. We have emails, catalogs, all of our paid media. All is done within our team in-house, and that's really important for us because we want to keep our brand cohesive across all these touch points. And we also want to be able to quickly learn what's working on one channel that we can leverage to other channels. So we'll put an email out, and if that's working really, really well, they're responding to this tagline or the subject line or the way we position the product, we can easily put up an ad for that in the next week. And our teams all sit together and they all work on all of these channels together. So the team is very much aware of how everything is performing across all the channels, and we're able to move quickly on where we're seeing wins within each channel, which is great. But I will say it's hard because we're kind of maxed out at this point, and it's hard to take on new channels and try new things. And we're at this point now that we do need to leverage some agency help to help us with creative proliferation, so we can really test more than just 4 ads a week,
Yeah.
And so we're at this point now that we are, talking to HYPE10 about how we can leverage their creative services to support our team while we'll still keep almost all the creative in-house, but how do we maximize it with some agency help?
Yeah, I think to speak to that briefly, a couple of different things there. Firstly, I think there is a long-standing notion that content on Meta is for Meta, content for TikTok is TikTok, right? And you cannot leverage that same asset elsewhere. I think that is bullshit. Meta should be your testing ground, right? So if you're testing content there, you find it resonates, you can scale it in Meta. When you go to scale it, go ahead and diversify it into Pinterest, into Snapchat, into TikTok. There's going to be a higher likelihood it's going to succeed, so that you don't have so much wasted ad spend across all of these different platforms and try to test every single one. And also alleviate some of that burden, right? So that you're not trying to create a Pinterest pin ad and a TikTok, style themed ad and all these different things. So I just wanted to touch on that quickly, but that is it on our end in terms of questions. So we'd love to open it up to the group here and see if y'all have any questions for our panel here. There we go. Sorry, I'm facing this way.
All right, I've got 2 questions. First one is, can you give us a sense of what you're trying to manage as how much money is going into creators as a spend relative to paid channels when you're trying to scale that and control? And then the second one is on the organic side, thoughts on, do you hire just a really great in-house creator who is truly a creator? Do you hire a social media manager? Do you try and do both? How do you manage that organic content?
Yeah, I mean, I think it really depends. You know, if we're seeing CACs are high and, you know, performance is kind of low across the entire account, we're obviously not going to be like spending a bunch of money on creators. We have really figured out a great system to kind of maximize the amount of concepts we're making with creators. We're putting out like 100 ads a week right now, and we've gotten a really good formula where we'll get a creator, and let's say you have a creator, they're talking to the camera, they send you B-roll. You can make 50 ads from that because you can have, you know, that video, you put up their B-roll, you put some text on it, you like do some TikTok trend, and then you stitch it to the best performing body of another one. So it's really easy to lower spend on creative. You just have to have the strategists that kind of like know how to reuse that content. And for organic, that's a tricky one because it's one we never had. I don't like it. Like, I never really wanted to invest in things that didn't have money coming back, but it is so good for brand. And I think it just depends on who your customer is. You have someone like Set Active, like them having a total TikTok trendy person running their account is exactly what they should be doing. That's just not going to work with our customer. They're like 40 plus, 50 plus. They want to be educated on the product that they're going to be purchasing. And so we have, again, so much ad traffic coming in to organic. So we kind of saw it as like the second step of the sales pipeline. How do we even sell more of the product? Just with education. And so for that, it's like, how do we do that? We're going to need a social media manager that's capable of putting together a ton of good educational content that's not just like sloppy and thrown together. But it's like, if you're selling a product to a bunch of 25-year-olds, go get a girl that's good with her phone and she will get you some viral content.
But to agree with everything there, and I would say, I think it's a social media manager who can do both, right? Like that is what you need in the end. And that I think goes back to hiring people that are, like primarily I would say on social media and organic specifically, first, they need to be really good creators. Like they need to be able to understand what content resonates on this specific platform. Like for us, the person who launched our like organic content on Instagram, who's now like overseeing social, she was the right age, right? Like right, it was great. Like if you met her, you'd be like you would be a great influencer on Instagram. But then who's growing our TikTok presence is a guy who works for her, right? Who is younger and like just gets it. And we actually, for a while, we were like very like taking that Instagram mindset and putting it on TikTok, and it did not work. And when we just let him go, it was great. It really worked. But at the end of the day, they also do care about follower growth. They care about what's working. They care about where they're seeing the engagement. So they care about the analytics. They care about the performance. But I will say, I think they need to be creators first who care about what are they driving from a performance perspective, and understanding like, does this actually translate to ads? Is this translating to virality and things like that, and just trying to evolve and update as needed.
Yeah, I echo that too. We actually have a kind of split. Organic side sits under our creative director, who is an influencer on her own. So she really knows and understands the space, can actually create content for us. But the paid side, which is how we run, all the content that we pay influencers for and then use it on all of our channels, that sits under me. And that's really more of a content engine. And we, have specific ROAS against all of our spend for all the influencers and what we expect from that, from the performance side. So, the creative director and I sit right next to each other. We're very much on a team together on the influencer space, but we run it a little bit separately based on what we're expecting out of it. So.
Awesome. Any other questions, y'all? Scott?
Thank you guys so much for everything so far. Curious, I know Madeline, you said you guys are starting to expand into TV, but curious how you guys are all thinking about upper funnel, both from a media and channel expansion, and then also creators. I know you said organic, which people could see is brand, and some of that. So just curious what upper funnel means to each of you.
Yeah, I mean, for me, again, like with our product, it's such a need-based thing. So for me, it's anything that's going to get people having a conversation about liver health. It's like a very niche thing, right? And so it's like hitting them through those channels where it's like, okay, they're just seeing us on TV, organic, stuff like that, and like starting the conversation before liver health is even on their mind. And then, they come around to actually wanting to prioritize it. They went to the doctor, they, got that liver enzyme level check, and they said they were high, they're ready to go, support their liver. They're going to be thinking about dose because we've already hit them on all of these different channels.
for us, everything we're obsessing over is upper funnel, and I think it's interesting to kind of like think about what part of the funnel to focus on based on maturity of your business and your brand. And for us, we're building a brand, right? Like that is what we're doing at the end of the day. And the larger the brand is, kind of everything else comes accordingly. And so we feel like we've kind of maxed out some of more like the mid, right? Like it's like if you walk down the street in New York, you're gonna see a Daphne Dover bag. Like that's not an issue. But then how am I gonna make sure that like in like the middle of nowhere in Michigan, somebody actually knows Daphne Dover and is, as a result, maybe buying it at their local like department store or online. I don't really care where you're buying it, buy it. But what we're seeing is like that's upper funnel, right? So it's thinking through for us, where are we now versus where we were even 2 years ago, and how do you continue to expand? And then the channels. That's why TV, huge conversation for us because everybody is watching something on Hulu and you want to get in front of your demo, right? And it's very interesting, and we've tested everything in part of upper funnel more than I even think other channels is about testing, because I know brands that crush it on podcasts, and for us it's never really done what we expected, which is fascinating to me still to this day. But like TV works, out of home has worked sometimes it hasn't, and so you have to just kind of ebb and flow. And in a way, because of where CPMs are going on your traditional paid channels, it's making it easier to rationalize upper funnel spend, because you're kind of like, my CPMs are actually cheaper on some of those channels than they are on Google in certain ways. And so it's just really thinking about that and making sure that you have the right partners internally and externally to then manage down the funnel and get through that conversion funnel.
Yeah, we've done some work recently on developing our brand further. So we have 50 stores, we're in at least 200 doors in wholesale, we have a very robust e-commerce business. People pretty much in our target market know Marine Layer, but what they don't know the tagline of Marine Layer, and we're really working hard internally to develop that. And I feel like once we get to a better place in that sense, then it will make all the upper funnel marketing more effective. So we've hired a creative director, we've hired more people actually on our copywriting team to really develop our voice more, bring humor into our brand, which was really a part of our brand in the beginning, but we kind of lost our way a little bit. So as you scale and become bigger, it becomes even more important to keep your brand really close and tight, and that's the work we're doing internally. And once we've kind of finished that, then investing in these top of the funnel channels will be more effective for us. So I'm excited to see where our brand really goes this year in terms of our branding and our positioning, and then really unlocking some of the upper funnel marketing.
Thanks. Anyone else?
I can talk about it. So I'm curious, one thing I haven't really heard talked a lot about today is the tariffs and the impact on consumer sentiment. I'm curious how you guys are thinking about that, both in terms of impact to your marketing strategy, because there's two sides to it. One, you potentially have cost increases. I know Dagny, I think, produces overseas, right? Like Marine Layer produces predominantly in the US, but you've got these different layers to your supply chain that are unknown impact of what's going to happen. And you now have the external consumer impact, right? Normally tariffs changing, the average consumer doesn't know about that. Now they know, and they're all worried. So how are you guys thinking about your marketing strategy for the year ahead, and what changes are you starting to implement versus where are you in more of a wait and see position?
We're not talking about it because we don't want to talk about it.
Sorry.
Because the amount of tariff screenshots of ads that have gone on in our Slack channels recently. I think with that, we kind of looked at it from okay, what is going to be the potential revenue loss this year from what we'll be losing on not raising prices? And then how many people would this price out of the product? It's a pretty expensive product that people are purchasing from us, and it's a subscription, so people are going to be paying this monthly. And I think when you look at it, it's not worth the potential loss of, people already complain about the price, let's not make them complain about it even more. I think another thing too, because we're in a space where there isn't we are both over the counter, there isn't a prescribed medication really for liver health, so it's if we're making this now even more expensive and harder for people to get, it doesn't really feel right morally as a business. If our mission is we want to help people with their liver health and provide something and it's already an expensive product, we can't make it bigger. So we're just going to exclude even more people from purchasing the product. So it was kind of a moral thing, I think, for us. And then also, of course, you have to look at the numbers. And it just kind of seemed like the amount of revenue we would lose from people that wouldn't purchase in the first place was going to outweigh what, the alternative.
I'll speak to those quickly as well. Impacted predominantly for secondary and tertiary packaging. Right, so opportunity there to basically move to another location, but still a lot of lack of clarity. Right, where should we move to? Right, where could we potentially reroute to? Right, if that's an option for us at our current scale or not. So we know the impact, but we feel confident in terms of how we're going to handle it and hold steadfast and eat the cost because we have the luxury of eating the cost. Right? We don't have to necessarily pass it off to the consumer.
Love this conversation. No, but in all seriousness, we have so we're in a category that first of all got hit with the 2018 tariffs. So I've been living tariffs. My technical title, I didn't say this, is COO. So I literally been living with tariffs and supply chain optimization and diversification for years now. And so I think we've managed China risk really well. And still though there is an impact and it's a lot of the same. So it's we're really talking about how do we share this throughout our supply chain so it does impact our customer the least. Having said that, everything is more expensive. And so we are ranging from, frankly, do we use this as an opportunity because it actually is in the media. Of 2018, it wasn't as much of a conversation. So we held on a price increase and then we did it later. And there was a lot that went on there. So there's everything from let's take advantage of the fact that everybody's aware to let's hold and own our customer. And I think at the end of the day, where we're landing is we know who our customer is and we know within our customer base who's gonna be the most resilient through whatever happens with the economy, and we're making our decisions based on that, right? Who's that customer that makes up the top 20% of our customer list that drives 40+% of our revenue? What's gonna matter to that customer? Because if we can retain or potentially grow that part of our customer base over the next 12 months, then we're gonna survive whatever happens with the economy. However tariffs evolve or grow, but a large part of it is wait and see. We have multiple scenarios on how we're going to handle this, but I think the one thing we're very confident is the decisions we make are gonna be based around our best VIP customers, because she or he is still gonna either shop maybe in a different way, maybe needs a little bit more of a discount, but from a CLV perspective, that's still not as bad as let me just try to get more out of new customers. So it's a lot about CLV, it's a lot about knowing your customer, and then figuring out how we can mitigate their risk across the supply chain.
No, like what you said, Max, if you have the luxury to be able to not do it, no takes.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the tough part about e-commerce. A great business is operating at 10 to 15% margin, and then this happens, and you need 2, 3, 4, 5% of that just gone.
Yeah, I've gotten as a consumer emails from small companies, and it was the founder wrote the letter, and it's listen, we can't afford to not raise the prices, and I will still purchase for them,
Yeah. We do have a sizable risk from China, and we're doing a ton of scenario planning right now. Because we have such a large business and a big wholesale business and retail, we have to make decisions on ticketing prices now for Q4. So we're making those decisions internally, doing our very best to keep prices as low as we can, but it's not likely that we will be able to hold our prices at what they are right now. So we have to do the best we can across every point in the supply chain and try to get as much as we can. But I think what we also want to do is make sure that in this time frame, we protect our brand. And that means that we are a place of respite and joy for our customer. And that's still going to come through every touch point of our marketing. We're not going to be sending them emails about why we're increasing prices. If we have to increase prices, then we will. But we want, our customer to open our emails and feel good, not to be reminded of what's happening in the news. They get that already enough, and a million other touch points. So we will continue to be a place of respite and joy for our customer, and do our very best to make some money while we can.
Great question. All right. I think that concludes this panel. I appreciate it.